If you go back in history, there are a variety of reasons for why George Washington was a really good first president. And one of those reasons is because he was always really cognizant about setting precedent. And anytime you're making a decision for the first time, you're talking about precedent. And that's where I think the college football playoff committee is with a new 12-team playoff. And one of the things that kind of sucks about not computers being the model, it's people picking the 12-team playoff. And you could probably argue that it might be better off with computers at this point, that we've got maybe the best of both worlds with a BCS formula and a 12-team playoff, but that might be another discussion for another day. When you have people selecting who makes the college football playoff, and especially in the first year of an expanded 12-team playoff, you need to figure out what precedents you're setting with the decisions that you make. And so I think one of the very first talks about precedent that need to be asked is, what does the college football playoff do with Notre Dame? Does the college football playoff committee rank Notre Dame above Texas A&M? Because on the field, those two teams played and Notre Dame won. And does that matter? Yes. Should that matter? Yes. But like with everything, there's nuance, there's context, there's all sorts of things that go into whether or not somebody should be ranked higher than somebody else. Does Texas A&M have a better resume than Notre Dame right now? You could probably argue that, and I wouldn't fight you on that. But did Notre Dame beat Texas? Yes. And now I don't think it's as cut and dry as simply Notre Dame won that game, therefore they're better than Texas A&M. Because you know what? It's September or September. It's the end of October. That game happened at the end of August. To pretend as if nothing has changed since then is a lie. It's disingenuous. Things change. It is a constantly moving target that you are trying to hit. Is Texas A&M better today than they were in August? Yeah. Is Notre Dame better today than they were in August? Yeah. Does Notre Dame have potentially the worst loss in teams in contention for the college football playoff? Yeah. But did Notre Dame beat Texas A&M? Yeah. And so I think that's one of those things that you have to like when you use it as a tiebreaker, I think so. If those two are equal, if the resumes stack up really well close to each other, do you then say, okay, Notre Dame beat Texas A&M, therefore it's Irish then Aggies? Yeah. But the idea that like, okay, well, Vanderbilt's better than Alabama. No, no, they're not. I don't think you could argue that. I don't think anybody would believe you if you tried to argue that. It's just not the case right now. Should Northern Illinois be ranked above Notre Dame? No. Should Ball State therefore be ranked above Northern Illinois, who's ranked above Notre Dame because Ball State beat Notre Dame? No. That's not how this works. But when the precedent is, if you're going to rank Notre Dame above Texas A&M for the college football playoff, and then the explanation is head-to-head matchups matter, then that means in the future head-to-head matchups have to matter, and that's part of where the 14 college football playoff went wrong was one year. One thing was really important, right? The very first year of the college football playoff, TCU and Baylor didn't get in because they didn't have a 13th data point. They didn't have the conference championship game, which that led to the downfall of college football as we know it. Um, it just not just that, but the Big 12 expands that. Therefore, it is all downhill from there. There are a lot of unintended consequences and a lot of things that can change year by year by year, especially when the college football playoff committee is constantly changing. When there are new faces and new people on the committee every year, they're not going to adhere to maybe the same things that the old committees adhered to. But when you are the first, when you are the brand new, you have to be wary about precedent. And so if you're going to say, Texas A&M should be ranked above Notre Dame, you're saying that the head to head does not matter. Now, I don't necessarily believe that, but that's what you're telling the greater college football world is that you can survive you can survive a home loss to start the season, and that team that beat you is not necessarily going to be viewed as better than you. If you then rank Notre Dame in front of Texas A&M, you are saying, "Hey, a bad home loss against Northern Illinois does not disqualify you from being ranked in the top 10, being ranked in the top 8." And I don't I have spoke about this before. I don't necessarily think I think college football is better if Notre Dame has the chance to learn and grow throughout the season, and not just Notre Dame, whatever team that may be. Because how many times have we seen somebody playing in a lesser bowl game than the college football playoff that you thought, "I sure as hell wouldn't wanna play them right now," that was maybe 10-2 or 9-3. Do you remember, was it 2016 maybe, that, USC and Penn State played in a really great Rose Bowl, spectacular game. And you very well could have argued that both of those teams could have or should have been in the college football playoff and absolutely would have been at a 12-team playoff. And they were 2 of the 4 best teams in the country, or 2 of the 5 best teams in the country. And so I think there deserves to be some wiggle room throughout the college football season. But when push comes to shove, you need to be concerned and worried about precedent. And so I'm really interested to see what the decision is with Notre Dame and Texas A&M, because does Texas A&M's best win over LSU is I think significantly better than Notre Dame's best win. Does Notre Dame look like a very good football team right now? Yeah, they do. And they figured a lot of things out. But is their resume better? And that's what I think that's how I think of it as is resume. Because yeah, I dislike the eye test argument because you can just look at somebody and say, "Oh, they're good." Yeah, yeah, you can. And that's subjective, extremely subjective. But when you put pen to paper and you put resumes together and you look at, okay, now all of that can be finagled, all of that can be, um, you know, spun around to make you look much better than maybe you are. But I would prefer hard data of here's the teams that we've beat, here's how efficient we are offensively, here's how many points we're scoring a game, here's how we do on third down, all of that stuff, rather than, yeah, but this team looks better than you. I think you have to have something to quantify it with, which is why, like, last year, was Alabama better than Florida State? Yeah, and I don't think anybody can really argue all that much differently. Did Florida State have a better resume than Alabama? Yes. And the committee, I just think, just didn't have the balls to say, "Hey, you know what? Alabama has a loss and Florida State doesn't, but we think the Crimson Tide are better." Because it's real unpopular to say when one team did everything you've asked of them, that you tell them then that the on the field games essentially do not matter. And I'm worried that that is the message being sent if Notre Dame is ranked behind Texas A&M, is that the on-field product does not matter. What happens between those lines at the end of the day is not as important as extenuating circumstances. So I think my gut tells me that Notre Dame is ranked ahead of Texas A&M in the rankings when they come out. But I don't I wouldn't be shocked either way, but my gut tells me that you have to be worried about precedent and you have to start by saying, "Hey, the games on the field matter." And if it ultimately comes to it's a Notre Dame versus Texas A&M for the 11th spot, the final spot in the college football playoff rankings, don't you have to then say, "These 2 teams played each other and we know what happened?" Yes, but I think it's not all that important in late October rankings But what happens in late October rankings should be able to translate to when it matters most on Selection Sunday. And where things go bad is when you say things in late October, early November that are then not true in December. And I think for the college football playoff, it would be in their best interest to avoid all of that. So you start out by saying the games on the field matter. So don't be shocked if Notre Dame is ranked above Texas A&M in the upcoming rankings. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Notre Dame should be ranked above Texas A&M, or should the Aggies be on top of the Irish? Let me know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we are pumping out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.